Hey guys, what's up? Emo Cat Dad here, hanging out with you, bringing you yet another edition of Emo Cat Dad Listens. If you're new here, then what I do is every day of 2024, I vow to check out a new band or artist. Check out 4 songs from across their discography, give you my initial thoughts on the songs, give you my ranking of the songs, and of course my overall thoughts on the artist based on what I just heard. Today's artist was a suggestion from one of you kind viewers, so please keep them coming. Leave those suggestions in the comments below of bands or artists I absolutely need to check out. As you can see, today's band is Imminence. We're celebrating Imminence releasing their new album, The Black, tonight at midnight, I guess, by the time you see this. So if you're watching this late Thursday night, then sorry, you gotta wait a little bit still. But if you stumbled upon this after a couple hours, you can go on your favorite streaming app and check out that album. Now, because I'm only checking out 4 songs, I tend to just stick to singles, so that's basically what's going to happen in this video. So I will get to a song off The Black, but it's one that's already released. But as my regular viewers know, I like to take a trip down the timeline of the band, so we're going to start with Imminence's first album, I, released back in 2014. And I checked out the song Those Who Seek. Okay, so this definitely sounds like a debut album from a metalcore band in 2014. We get a lot of wheedly wheedlies. We get some blast beats. There's a bleh shoehorned in there. Didn't feel like it was needed there, but they were like, this is what all the cool bands are doing, so we're going to do it too. It just came off a little bit generic. I mean, maybe in 2014, I would have loved this because I would have been like, oh yeah, holy hell, this is great. I didn't even mean to make that joke. But now I'm just like, yep, this is a 2014 song. While we're on the subject of the Wheedly Wheedlies, they were basically present from the beginning of the song. We get kind of a slow build up to the Wheedly Wheedlies as all part of the intro. The intro that was a minute long. If you're not a regular viewer, I do not like long intros. I do not like long musical breaks. I do not like long outros. So I'm warning you, Imminence. There was a spoken word section. I guess it was kind of like a bridge. It was actually pretty cool. I'm usually not the biggest fan of spoken word parts, but this one worked for me. I'm not quite sure why. All right, so I followed that up with a song off Imminence's 2019 record, Turn the Lights On. I checked out Infectious.
Got my heart in a cage and my soul is afflicted. If that was...
Holy hell. Now this is good. There's still some heavy parts, but there's also like super accessible music and vocals here. I really dug it. The lyrics do repeat a little bit in parts. I'm also not a big fan of repetition in lyrics. It did bug me to a degree, but ultimately I was just so drawn in by the music that I didn't really pay too much attention to lyrics because the music was really the main star of this track. But I wish they would stop with the long intros already. Moving on to their last album, as of this recording, Heaven in Hiding, I checked out the track Temptation. Finally, no long intro. Imminence finally listened. So first off, I love the violin in this track. It also showed up in the last track, and I remember thinking like, oh, that's cool, there's some violin. And then I didn't really hear it come back. But in this track, it's pretty poignant all the way through. So really enjoyed hearing that. Growing up on Yellowcard, I like me some violin in my rock music. Speaking of things I love, the second verse of this track, oh my god. That section may be my favorite section of Imminence that I've heard yet. And on top of that, a case for number 2 has to be given to the breakdown on this track. Last and finally not least, we reached the album The Black, which, again, releasing tonight at midnight. So check it out if you're so inclined. I checked out the debut single off that album called Continuum. Okay, so Infectious was pretty accessible. Then Temptation kind of took a step back in that department. So I really didn't know what to expect going into this. And the song just starts off stupid heavy. And it remains stupid heavy in the verses. The choruses are still pretty heavy as well, but the vocals go soft. We get like a clean vocal, and I don't even want to say clean. It's a super soft, clean vocal, which normally I wouldn't be a fan of, especially in heavy music. But the way the vocal interacts with that heavy music, it's like a perfect blend. But some of the unclean vocals I had more of an issue with. They started playing in kind of a heavier sound, whereas the previous vocals were either, straightforward metalcore heavy vocals, or, there was some hardcore vocals early on. This was trending in like the deathcore area in certain spots, so I didn't love those, but overall, I still had a good time. Alright, so those were the 4 tracks I checked out. Let's go ahead and rank them. At number 1, Infectious, obviously. Like I said, this was the most accessible track, and it's the one that I enjoyed the most. Yes, the lyrics repeated, but I enjoyed the music so much I didn't bump into when the lyrics repeated. And honestly, the lyrics were still pretty strong throughout. It was just certain sections when they repeated. I was like, that's a bummer. But I never felt annoyed by it because I was just having such a blast with the music. At number 2, I think I'll give it to Temptation. The violin really shines in this track, and I really dug that about it. And of course, those 2 sections that were so great about the song, the breakdown and that second verse. But there was a lot of musical breaks if there was any downside, and I think ultimately that's probably what kept it from the number 1 spot. At 3, I'm going Continuum. Like I just finished saying, I really love this track overall. I love the way the violin played, and when the soft vocals interact with the heavy music in the chorus, it played really well together. Unfortunately, some of the heavier vocals I was not as big of a fan of, but overall I still enjoyed myself with the song, and you know what? I think I'm just going to add the Black to my albums to check out list. And at 4, Those Who Seek. Like I said, this isn't a bad song by any stretch. It's pretty generic for the time that it came out, which isn't the end of the world. Lots of people were doing that in 2014. Had I have heard this back then, I'd probably be looking back on it fondly now. But in the year of 2024, 10 years after it's released, I've heard this song so many times from so many different artists. It didn't really do anything to stand out, so it definitely didn't have a chance at dethroning any of these other 3 tracks. Alright, so those were my tracks that I checked out. So what are my overall thoughts on Imminence? Well, I kind of spoiled it already. I'm very excited to check out the Black. If it's anything like Continuum, I'm going to have a good time at the very least with it. But I think there's room to grow. Like certain parts of Infectious and Temptation showed me, this band can reach pretty big heights for me and my personal taste. I would not be surprised if there's a track or 2 on this album that completely steals my attention and gets in some pretty heavy rotation for me for the rest of the year. But I guess time will tell in that regard. The vocals are super strong. I seen that they were Swedish. They don't sound overly European, which I appreciate. Sometimes being a Canadian, honestly, it's a little distracting in music. And musically, they've always had a good time, minus that first track, which again, nothing against them. They just did what everyone else was doing in that era, and I've just heard it too much. But the violin adds a nice new layer, and I'm hoping that continues, but based on Continuum, I can safely assume it does. Alright guys, thank you so much for checking out this video on Imminence. Like I said earlier, please leave your suggestions down there in the comments below of bands or artists I absolutely need to check out. I'm doing one of these every day of 2024, so I need your help to fill out this content library. I've already done over 100 of these, so if you just stumbled upon this video, thanks for making it to the very end. Please go back and check out my other 100 plus that I've done. Maybe you'll find something you like. In the event that's too much for you, I don't blame you. Especially if you're just like, hey, I just want to know what people are saying about Imminence the Black. Well, I didn't really tell you that, but if you did listen to Imminence the Black, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I will try to get back to them once I listen to the album myself. And then at least those people will have comments to read on what we as a community thought of the album. Let's have a conversation. But most importantly, I hope you stick around for the rest of the ride. And the best way to do that is if you simply cut my wrists and hit subscribe. Emo Cat Dad signing off. Until next time, I want to hear you sad.